Big Papa Truth here. I'm gonna give you guys my opinion on the flat earth, circle earth, ball earth, spinning earth. Have we all been lied to? Is there really a wolf in sheep's clothing? Was the flat earth leaked on purpose? Is there another reason for it? Or is it all just bull crap?
By the way, how much money is being spent on space? You should emblazon this in your head. Here it goes. This is the pie chart. $330 billion a year is spent on space.
You know there's big money in the space exploration. And where there's money, there's corruption. Let's dive a little deeper. You see, one thing that always brought me to the attention of possibly lies is the solar eclipse there. Always the sun and the moon are the exact same size when they line up. And one's 93 million miles, one's 270,000 miles away. They shouldn't line up. The odds of that are amazing. Let's talk about what flat earth is. The flat earth theory believes that the southern pole, the south pole, is actually an ice wall that holds all the water in. And there's a lot of footage, I guess, of the ice walls. One thing, there is a treaty, it's lasted, one of the longest lasted treaties between all nations, that no one goes to the South Pole, no one flies over the South Pole. The airlines say it's too cold for planes to fly over it. There's a lot of suspicion about the South Pole, and it still matches up exactly on a globe or the Gleason or flat earth map. You still go south and always hit the pole. Some of the early astronomers and philosophers from Greek, there you see Aristotle, Plato, they all believed, of course, that the earth was flat. Some of the smartest civilizations, the Mayans, of course, they built the calendar and mapped the stars. They believed the earth was flat and had four corners. I guess myself, I definitely believe we're a circle. I think the sun and the moon, all circles were. Circle makes sense. But I definitely don't feel like I'm spinning 1,000 miles per hour. It just cracks me up because Copernicus was for the ball and Aristotle was against it and Newton was for it and Tesla was against it. They were going against religion, and religion, the Bible tells us that God separated the waters above and the waters below, and he put the two great lights inside the firmament, the sun and the moon, and that they rotate around the earth, and the earth does not move. The Bible's pretty specific on it. I guess that's what interests me, is everyone's divided on this issue when no one can really prove it. Let's listen to NASA, though.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
Spent years studying the moon landing, and like that pad on the lander, no dust, no crater. But this is probably the most damaging footage. Take a look at the lunar lander and notice that the rover is still unpackaged. And the tracks are all over the moon already. That's impossible. Give me a break. Dig a little bit deeper, see what we can find. Let's take a look at how rocket fuel burns in a vacuum.
Light it off. First in the atmosphere, and then in the vacuum. Okay, as you can see, it produced lots of smoke and burned rather quickly. The gunpowder did not ignite, and asked if I could try rocket fuel in this test, and so I'm going to be burning some rocket candy. This is a mixture of sugar, potassium nitrate, and iron oxide. This is used in amateur rockets because the ingredients are readily available and the amount of thrust it produces is quite high. So let's light this on fire and see how it does. So this is in Earth atmosphere. As you can see, no ignition. That's interesting.
So how are you going to get a rocket to burn in space? Propel you back and forth without being able to do anything in a vacuum. Yeah, so I don't believe anything NASA says, but let's go check out the debunkers on the flat earth. This flat earther is talking about the fact that there's almost no photos of Earth from space, and really none that are shown it spinning. And they try to debunk him big time, but they actually end up agreeing with him. Check it out.
Every other image is what they call a composite. It's Photoshop. And many of us have been looking at these images of Earth, including the one they call the Big Blue Marble, which was released in 2002, I think. Again, when you zoom into it with Photoshop, you'll see where they've used the clone tool in Photoshop to take a picture of one of the clouds and stamp it in various places around the picture. And they got lazy.
What he said here is pretty much true. There are very few photos of the Earth from space, but the one of Africa is not the only one. It's just the most famous and commonly used one. Galileo, which was a space probe, actually took several shots of the Earth as it was leaving. And there are actually several photos of the Earth as taken from the moon, but those are not complete photos. You don't see very much of the Earth, and it's not in very high resolution. Most of the complete photos of the Earth are actually composites that were taken from orbit and then had clouds added to them afterwards. That way they could control the environment and control the weather so that the better features of the planet weren't obscured by clouds. But this is...
And they have to admit it because NASA already messed up and admitted it themselves, so it's just like damage control. I mean, I don't doubt it one bit because it all looks fake too, and they admit it. I mean, there's nothing to doubt about that.
In another image, they've even photoshopped the word sex in the clouds, which is a subliminal tool they use to get people to relate to something. They literally, you can look at this and find it on NASA's website.
Yeah, and that's fucking hilarious. But that doesn't prove that the Earth is flat.
I don't think it's hilarious that our kids can go on to NASA and being told to go to NASA and see things like that written into the sky. I mean, it just tells you what NASA's all about to me, just like Disney. But here in this video is a pilot took at 39,000 feet. Notice the sun actually coming towards him, not rising up above. And just notice how flat everything is. I mean, it's what we observe is flat. Now let's go to the baller's biggest scientific proof. Supposedly the ship that goes over the horizon is actually going over the curve. But it is true, and my family does have a P900 Nikon that shows when you zoom in to those objects that disappeared over the curve, they reappear, and all completely reappear, the bottom, everything. I guess you're under the impression that if you got a stronger telescope, no matter how far it got, you could just keep pulling it back in when you're out in the water, because of course the water is level. Water always finds its own level. And I have to admit, I actually bought the Nikon P900 just to do the test because I was curious about the flat earth. I had been awoke to things like, of course, 9/11, Boston bomb, Sandy Hook, easy things, but I kept looking at this and kind of thinking, no, it's just a setup. They want you to look at this and then they can call you crazy like with the alien crap. But when you actually do the scientific experiments, and like I have a degree in applied science, and you know, I have a career that took years and years of schooling, and I finished the top of my class, and so I have to look at these experiments that I can do myself, and I have to wonder, wow, that is it just perspective? I mean, as you look down a row of telephone poles, they get smaller, just like how it looks like the sun is actually rising or setting. And then I thought about, we took a trip to the top of the Sears Tower. You get to the top, you look around, you can see all these different states: Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Missouri. You can see like 5 states, I guess, from up here. We went out and stood on the actual glass walkway and looked, but everything is flat. I mean, that's what you see. Now, I'm not denying that we're a circle, but it is kind of weird how the moon is a circle, no doubt, but the moon, we never see the other side. It always is like a watch, you know, it's like the face of a watch. It's facing us and it's turning like the hands are turning, and maybe that's what we are. I mean, how can anyone laugh at it is what I want to know. How can you laugh and you see here's the fisheye lens that a lot of the weather balloons, which me and my family are going to send one up. They'll take these pictures with a fisheye lens where it actually puts a natural curve before it ever leaves the ground. If you go with a no fisheye lens, you get a flat picture, what your eye actually sees. And so me and my family have already bought the balloon, and I'm going to get 4 of the GoPros, no fisheye lens, and we're going to send it up and get some multiple pictures. So look for that in the next month or so. I'm never done researching. I never laugh at anybody for what they believe, because I was asleep once and I'm still learning. One of the biggest keys to waking up is realizing everything that you were taught at one point was probably a lie, and you have to re-evaluate everything for truth. And the book, the Bible, it tells you right out of the gate in the first chapter that the earth doesn't move. And I think that's the biggest key, that instead of proving whether we're a ball or a circle or a square, we should just be proving that we're not spinning. That's so easy to prove in all the footage. You go to the footage from the Red Bull guy jumping. Nothing was spinning. It's supposed to be spinning. Where is the point out there in outer space where everything's not spinning with you? It just doesn't make sense, people.
If Earth were truly a spinning ball, then many of these rivers would be impossibly flowing uphill. For example, the Mississippi, in its 3,000 miles, would have to ascend 11 miles before reaching the Gulf of Mexico. Spherical trigonometry dictates the surface of all standing water must curve downward an easily measurable 8 inches per mile, multiplied by the square of the distance. This means, along a 6-mile channel of standing water, the Earth would dip 6 feet on either end from the central peak. Every time such experiments have been conducted, however, standing water has proven to be perfectly level.
A really great book right here, The Earth is Not a Globe, by Dr. Samuel Robotham. Anybody interested in learning more about the scientific experiments he did back then, he spent 30, 40 years on it. Most of his life, and he had a big turning at the turn of the 19th century. A lot of people were talking about it, and then it got hushed up.
Architects are never required to factor the supposed curvature of the Earth into their projects. Canals, railways, bridges, and tunnels, for example, are always cut and laid horizontally, often over hundreds of miles without any allowance for curvature. The Lieutenant Colonel Portlock experiment used oxyhydrogen Drummond's lights and heliostats to reflect the sun's rays across stations set up across 108 miles of St. George's Channel. If the Earth were actually a ball 25,000 miles in circumference, Portlock's light should have remained hidden under 1.5 miles of curvature. If the Earth were truly a sphere 25,000 miles in circumference, airplane pilots would have to constantly correct their altitudes downwards so as to not fly straight off into outer space. A pilot wishing to simply maintain their altitude at a typical cruising speed of 500 miles per hour would have to constantly dip their nose downwards and descend 2,777 feet, over half a mile, every minute. Otherwise, without compensation, in 1 hour's time, the pilot would find themselves 31.5 miles higher than expected. The experiment known as Airy's failure proved that stars move relative to a stationary Earth and not the other way around. By first filling a telescope with water to slow down the speed of light inside, then calculating the tilt necessary to get the starlight directly down the tube, Airy failed to prove the heliocentric theory, since the starlight was already coming in the correct angle with no change necessary, and instead proved the geocentric model correct. The Michelson, Morley, and Sagnac experiments attempted to measure the change in speed of light due to Earth's assumed motion through space. After measuring in every possible different direction in various locations, they failed to detect any significant change whatsoever, again proving the stationary geocentric model. Tycho Brahe famously argued against the heliocentric theory in his time, positing that if the Earth revolved around the Sun, the change in relative position of the stars after 6 months' orbital motion could not fail to be seen. He argued that the stars should seem to separate as we approach and come together as we recede. In actual fact, however, after 190 million miles of supposed orbit around the Sun, not a single inch of parallax can be detected in the stars, proving that we have not moved at all. If Earth were truly constantly spinning eastwards at over 1,000 miles per hour, vertically fired cannonballs and other projectiles should fall significantly due west. In actual fact, however, when this has been tested, vertically fired cannonballs shoot upwards an average of 14 seconds ascending, 14 seconds descending, and fall back to the ground no more than 2 feet away from the cannon, often directly back into the muzzle. If the Earth were truly constantly spinning eastward at over 1,000 miles per hour, helicopters and hot air balloons should be able to simply hover over the surface of the Earth and wait for their destinations to come to them. If Earth were truly constantly spinning eastward at over 1,000 miles per hour, during the Red Bull stratosphere dive, Felix Baumgartner, spending 3 hours ascending over New Mexico, should have landed 2,500 miles west into the Pacific Ocean, but instead landed a few dozen miles east of the takeoff point. Ball believers often claim gravity magically and inexplicably drags the entire lower atmosphere of the Earth in perfect synchronization up to some undetermined height, where this progressively faster spinning atmosphere gives way to the non-spinning, non-gravitized, non-atmosphere of infinite vacuum space. Such nonsensical theories are debunked, however, by rain, fireworks, birds, bugs, clouds, smoke, planes, and projectiles, all of which would behave very differently if both the ball Earth and its atmosphere were constantly spinning eastward at 1,000 miles per hour.
And then you start talking about the Coriolis effect, where all those things that they just talked about, they don't matter, but somehow they affect bullets. And this is where it gets pretty ridiculous. It's more like another gravity thing where it's selective in how it affects things. Supposedly facing north in the northern hemisphere, the bullet goes off to the right, and facing in the south, it goes off to would be your left, so the opposite way because of the spin. But actually the moon and the sun are actually like magnets, and they curve a path through, creating a whirlwind basically off of each side, both going counterclockwise from each other away. And you'll notice in a video coming up right here, a woman does it in her swimming pool, and it creates two whirlwinds opposite side counterclockwise by making the path through the middle of the water. It's the same thing. The Earth, the moon and the sun's path through are creating a disturbance, and the water is electrified, of course, because of salt in it and many other factors. It's in the air. Check this out.
Gustave Coriolis performed several experiments showing the effect of kinetic energy on rotating systems, which have ever since become mythologized as proof of the heliocentric theory. The Coriolis effect is often said to cause sinks and toilet bowls in the northern hemisphere to drain spinning in one direction, while in the southern hemisphere causing them to spin the opposite way, thus providing proof of the spinning ball.
As you see here, they try to say that in the south it goes down a drain one way, and in the north, that's completely ridiculous. It all matters how the water is introduced to the bowl of which way it goes down. As you can see in this video, they just run the water on one side, it goes one way, you run the water, it goes the other way. It's just completely ridiculous.
And the angle of the water's entry.
They say that the Coriolis effect is a result of the Earth spinning and is responsible for the deflection of an object moving above the Earth, rightward in the northern hemisphere and leftward in the southern hemisphere. The problem is that things like hurricanes and water in the sink aren't always predictable and have been known to spin both ways in either hemisphere. Also, another contradiction that proves the Coriolis effect false is the fact that no flying machine above the Earth has to account for it. If a bullet that travels 1,700 miles per hour has to account for the effect, then an airplane traveling at 550 miles per hour would definitely have to account for the effect.
I think that guy did a great job explaining it, but this sniper, the world's longest kill, 1.5 miles away, you watch his video on here on YouTube, he tells you how he took in the shot. He doesn't do anything to do with the Coriolis effect. He's figuring in the elevation. The crosswinds is the biggest thing, just the regular wind, but he only aims 1 millimeter off when a moving target, And on this, since it was a mile and a half, he moved 4 millimeters, which equaled 15 feet each way. He didn't say anything about the Coriolis effect. He's worried about crosswinds, elevation, the bullet type. Just ridiculous, man.
Why would bullets be? Especially when they go much faster than common airplanes.
And even with the storms, they don't constantly go the same direction. There's exceptions, so it's not like it's a law. But take a look at this video right here. This woman pretty much explains how it works. The sun and the moon make their path. They make this ripple. 2 ripples spinning opposite ways from each other on each side.
In the northern hemisphere, the one that is furthest away from the observer, the one towards the top of the screen, should have died out last. Why? Because it is being aided by the so-called rotation of the Earth, while the other one is being hindered by the Coriolis effect and the same rotation of the Earth. As you will see, though, both of these, after 3 minutes, die out at the same time, showing there is no effect of the Coriolis effect. Now let's watch the completion of this effect here, which is of no effect.
The water in the pool. That's it. But look what forms. Perfect black circles on the bottom of the pool. And it's so weird. They don't die. They just keep going right next to each other. I sped this footage up because the circles took 3 minutes to cross the pool and didn't seem to be dying out. These got sharper as they went and made it all the way across. So cool. And look closer. You can see what's causing them. There are 2 almost unnoticeable dips in the surface of the water. Why don't they die out? And how do these dark spots form? And why do the dips move together? So many questions.
Yeah, like why is the UN use the flat Earth map? And why is it separated into 33 boxes? Well, let's get into the law of gravity, though. I mean, gravity's very selective for being a law. It gets to pick and choose. Take a look at these beetle shells and how they levitate. Unbelievable. They defy gravity. There's no outside force there. That's just amazing. I mean, think about all the things that are allowed to leave off of the Earth and fly around and levitate, but all the ships that are upside down with all that cargo and all the water spinning upside down, none of that falls off and falls into space. I mean, look at the beautiful bumblebee. How does he do it when his body is so big and he's barely got them little wings, yet he can also carry 90% of his body weight with him? So think about him defying gravity before you laugh at people who question the fact that neither side can prove what we really live on. But when the scriptures say it over and over that we're not moving, we're not spinning, I'm trusting God, because man lies. I mean, how does this giant bird, it's like 30 pounds, these birds, they defy gravity. But if you look at the scripture, God's pretty clear about why he made the rainbow and man's covenant with God, that he would never flood the earth again. And the rainbow is an amazing thing.
So I'm just out in my yard. A lot of people forget that you can create your own rainbow if you just turn on a sprinkler. And if the sun is angled the right way, only when you're outdoors, you will get a rainbow. So that's the first question. Why can you not simulate a rainbow indoors? There's a stipulation. You can create a rainbow indoors, but you need a mirror. You need a mirror to do a science test and create a rainbow inside. So I beg the question, if you need a mirror indoors, what's providing the mirror when you are outdoors? It is a fixed hologram in space. Now, modern science says what's happening is an optical illusion. It's forming on your eyeball, and I guess in this case they would say it's the camera's sensor. But they say that a rainbow is happening on your eyeball. You're having your own unique experience. When you see a rainbow, the person standing next to you won't have the same experience. That's what they claim, because they say each water droplet is creating a prism that is taking the white light and separating it out into all the different colors. I don't think that makes any sense, guys. I think what's actually happening is that each water droplet of this 3D field, each water droplet is acting as its own lens. And so this lens is going to be slightly different from this lens. Not that each water droplet is projecting its own rainbow. That's totally absurd. So that means that one line is converging here and another line is converging somewhere else. There is a mirror when you are outside to create the rainbow. And that mirror is the dome. It's catching sunlight and it's meeting itself to create all the various colors. It collides in the water droplet, serves as a lens, and the slight variations of angle creates the colors of the rainbow. A rainbow proves that there's a dome above your head.
So I know that's a lot of information to pack in a video, but I'm sure there's still questions. That's why we keep on researching, but I just go with the word. I know God said the earth ain't moving. I know he said he put those two lights in here, and I believe it. And anybody else can believe what they want. I'm going to keep digging. You should do the same. God bless everybody. Big Papa Truth. I'm all about the truth. Truth is, we ain't spinning.